How's it going, guys? And this will be giving you my 2017 NHL playoff predictions and comparing them to the NHL 17 playoff simulation. So starting off here, I actually have to make my playoff predictions. Haven't done them yet, just gonna kind of make them live for you guys. So I guess we'll start off with the Western Conference teams. We have Chicago and Nashville in the first matchup. So personally, I think Chicago will take that one. I think probably just the experience gets it done. For the next central matchup here, we have Minnesota versus St. Louis. Honestly, I think St. Louis will take this one. They've been really hot of late. Minnesota's actually started to cool down, so I think that'll just carry over into the playoffs. The next matchup here, we have Anaheim and Calgary. Honestly, I'm not a huge believer in Calgary, other than that one crazy run they had. Been pretty mediocre all year. Anaheim, on the other hand, has been pretty consistent, so just going to go with Anaheim for that reason. And then finally, we have Edmonton, San Jose. Might be my favorite matchup of the series. It's either that or Chicago, Nashville. Obviously, cannot wait to see McDavid and Draisaitl in their first ever playoff. I'm already wearing the McDavid jersey tee, so I think you guys know who I want to win. That's also who I think is going to win. I honestly think McDavid's going to reach another level in the playoffs with Draisaitl. Cam Talbot's been playing amazing, and even though San Jose is a very good team, for some reason, the team that loses the Stanley Cup never really does that great the next year, so they did make the playoffs, but I can honestly see San Jose being a first-round knockout from the Oilers. It'll be a very good series, probably go 7 games, but I think Edmonton's going to take that one. Moving on now, guys, to the Eastern Conference, we have Montreal and New York in the first matchup. Honestly, this is probably the toughest one for me to pick. It's the one I'm the most 50-50 on. You have two of the best goaltenders in the world in Carey Price and Henrik Lundqvist, so I think it's probably going to come down to goaltending, who has the better series, and I think you got to kind of just give Price the edge there. He's younger, Lundqvist is getting older. Montreal's been shaky throughout the year, so has New York though, and I think Montreal, just with that extra home game maybe, it could come to Game 7, and that extra home game could get them the win, but like I said, it's going to be probably a very close series, and this is the one I'm the most torn about. I could easily go New York, just kind of a 50-50 for me. Next year we have Ottawa, Boston. For whatever reason, I'm just liking Boston in this series. I'm not sure why. I just feel like their offense is going to overpower Ottawa's. Obviously, Erik Karlsson, if he's healthy, is going to be a huge factor. But even with Karlsson, for some reason, I just like Boston in this matchup, so I'm going to take them to move on. Next year, we have Washington and Toronto. Toronto fans obviously ecstatic to finally be back in the playoffs. Unfortunately for them, I think it's going to be a one-and-done first-round exit from the Washington Capitals. Really shouldn't feel bad about it, though. You're losing to the best team in the NHL, who I think is going to have a crazy run in the playoffs. I think this might be the best team they've ever had, and last year's team was crazy. So, and then finally here we have Pittsburgh, Columbus. One of the dumbest matchups in this playoff series. Not because it's a bad matchup, but because you have the second and fourth best teams in the NHL matched up in the first round. Just makes no sense to me. Really wish they would change the playoff format. Kind of feel bad for Columbus fans, but I think it's going to be a good series. I think Columbus could definitely push this 6 or 7 games, but in the end, I think Pittsburgh will definitely get the edge and win that series. So back to the Western Conference, we have Chicago and St. Louis there in the semifinal. I think Chicago, for like the 4th time in 5 years, will get the edge there on St. Louis. St. Louis just isn't as good a team as they've been in the past this year. And then we have Anaheim and Edmonton, and I think Edmonton continues the Cinderella story, defeating the Anaheim Ducks. I think Anaheim's just too slow for Edmonton's speed. I think Edmonton's size matches up really well with Anaheim's. Defense, obviously, you have to give Anaheim the edge, but goaltending, Cam Talbot's been playing great. If he can continue that into the playoffs, I see no reason why Edmonton can't make it to the conference final here and go up against the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, this matchup is going to be crazy. Edmonton versus Chicago. It's going to kind of be like the current dynasty versus the next dynasty, and in their first ever matchup, I think Chicago will get the edge. Moving over to the Eastern Conference now, we have Montreal and Boston in the first semifinal matchup. For this one, I'm feeling Montreal. I think Boston has the offensive edge, Montreal has the defensive edge, and the goalies, obviously, Rask's a really good goalie, but if Price is on his A game, no goalie in the league is as good as Carey Price, and he can be the X factor for Montreal to push them into the Eastern Conference final. And then the next series matchup, we have Washington and Pittsburgh. Now this honestly could be the Stanley Cup final, and I would be happy with that. The two best teams in the league based on points, and I think the one thing for Pittsburgh that's really going to hurt them in this matchup against Washington is not having Chris Letang. He's out for the rest of the playoffs, I believe. I think he's out for like 6 months, and I mean, losing your #1 defenseman, it's really hard to make up for that, especially when you're playing a juggernaut like the Washington Capitals. They added Kevin Shattenkirk. This is like the best team they've had in years, and I think Washington will finally get done here in the playoffs against Pittsburgh and move on to the conference final to play Montreal. And in that matchup against Montreal, I think Washington will take it unless Carey Price goes absolutely god mode. Washington has the much better offense, they have the much better defense, and the goaltending, Washington's is almost as good. Like, Holtby is a very, very good goaltender. Obviously, I personally believe Price is the best goalie in the world, so Price would have to stand on his head and just stop everything, I think, for Montreal to beat the Capitals. But if Price just has like a good series, Holtby has a good series, I think Washington's offense and defense will be too much for Montreal to handle, and they will get the edge there and move on to the Stanley Cup Final to play the Chicago Blackhawks. This is going to be a great series, I think, for the Stanley Cup Final. Chicago and Washington, two powerhouses for sure. Hopefully we'll go 7 games. In my personal opinion, I think we'll be seeing Ovechkin's first ever Stanley Cup, which would be awesome to see, honestly. So those are my Stanley Cup predictions, guys. Hopefully no one's too upset with them. I know a lot of times people get mad if I don't pick their team to win the cup or I have their team going out early. You just have to understand, I'm just doing my best guess here to guess what I think is going to happen. Only one of the 16 teams can win the Stanley Cup, so hopefully you can understand that. But next, guys, we'll be moving on to the NHL 17 playoff simulation, see what happens there and how it compares to my picks. And right here, guys, look at the settings for the simulation. Obviously, try to make it as realistic as possible. It's a best of 7 series, 20-minute periods, continuous OT. The difficulty is set to Superstar in case that matters, and the game style there is set to Full Sim, which is the most realistic of the game styles. So hopefully, they'll just give us the most realistic simulation. Now, as you guys can see here, I have all the first round matchups set, so let's start the simulation and see what happens. So I just finished the simulation, and as you can see there, we have our first ever back-to-back Stanley Cup champions since I believe the 96-97 Detroit Red Wings and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Also, as you can see there, they actually beat the Edmonton Oilers in the Stanley Cup Final 4-2. Honestly, this isn't the Stanley Cup Final I predicted would happen, but I would love to see this. McDavid versus Crosby in the Stanley Cup Final would be absolutely unreal. And like I was saying, I didn't predict that to happen, nor do I think that'll happen, but that honestly might be like my preferred outcome. If we could see Crosby and McDavid one-on-one in the Stanley Cup Final, that would just be so much fun to watch. Like, that'd be incredible. Kind of like what we were hoping for from the World Cup, North America versus Canada. Never got to see it. Seeing Edmonton versus Pittsburgh, that would just be crazy. So first I'll show you guys the playoff tree, and then I'll show you kind of like the player stats for it. I guess we'll start off with the Western Conference. So Nashville actually beat Chicago there 4-2. Minnesota beat St. Louis 4-2. Anaheim beat Calgary 4-1. There were actually no first round sweeps, but that was the closest thing. Edmonton there beat San Jose 4-2. Nashville then beat Minnesota 4-2. Edmonton beat Anaheim 4-3. And then they beat the Nashville Predators 4-3. So two really close 7-game series. In the East, we have New York beating Montreal 4-3. Like I said, that series is going to be crazy close. Definitely going 7 games, I think. Boston, Ottawa. Boston just edges Ottawa there 4-3. Washington barely beats Toronto there 4-3. I think Toronto fans will be pretty happy if that series goes to 7 games. And then Pittsburgh also just beat Columbus there in a 7-game series. New York then beats Boston 4-2. Pittsburgh sweeps the Capitals 4-0. If you were to tell me that there's only one sweep that's going to happen in the playoffs and it's Pittsburgh over Washington, I would not believe you at all. So I think that's a bit of a stretch. I could see Pittsburgh winning, but sweeping the Capitals, I don't think so. They then go on to beat the Rangers in a 7-game series before, like we said earlier, going on to beat the Edmonton Oilers and becoming the Stanley Cup champions. So that's pretty crazy. Honestly, I wouldn't mind it all playing out like that. Like I said, I think Crosby versus McDavid would just be so much fun to watch. So also going to show you guys the player stats here, just to kind of see who was leading the league in points. So Rick Nash didn't even make it to the Stanley Cup Final. Still finished the most points, though, 28. JT Miller, 27. So the Rangers forwards there, just killing it. McDavid, though, 25 and 26. Nuge there, big playoffs for him, 24, 26. Zibanejad, Crosby. So Crosby probably wins the Conn Smythe. Losing in 6 games, I doubt they would give it to McDavid, especially Crosby. 2 less games played, only 2 less points. I think Crosby probably takes home back-to-back Conn Smythe trophies. Draisaitl there, 22 points. Still can't believe they have him rated as an 84 overall. Just, you know, such an insult, I think, to Draisaitl, but probably going to get a huge boost next season. Phil Kessel, back-to-back Stanley Cup champion. People are going to love saying that. He had a good playoff as well, 20 points. Eberle, 19. Benino also had a really good playoff, 18 points. Same with Malkin there. Kunitz at 16. Pouliot, 15. I'm going to take a look here at the goalies, see how they did. I actually did notice that Pittsburgh decided to go with Marc-Andre Fleury, so I don't know if Matt Murray got injured, if they just decided to go with the veteran instead, but 2.24 goals against is pretty solid. Let's try and get the save percentage in there as well, 0.93. Cam Talbot, 2.3 goals against, 0.924 save percentage. The best one was actually Pecorine there, 1.79 and 0.943 save percentage. So, I mean, if he stands on his head, I could definitely see Nashville going deep, which is what happens in the sim. But that's pretty much it, guys, for the playoff simulation. Let me know what you guys think about this sim, as well as my predictions. Like I was saying, I would love to see Pittsburgh Edmonton in the Stanley Cup Final. I don't think it's going to happen, but that would be awesome. Can't wait for the playoffs to start in a couple of days. If you guys did enjoy this video, leave a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a nice day. Goodbye.